Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Friday episode of Stand Up, where I have two excellent guests joining me today. From Heated.world, the great climate journalist Emily Atkin is here. Lots to talk with her about. And Christian Finnegan joins me because it's Friday, and we had an awesome conversation, as we always do. Very excited to have both these guests joining me here on the Friday show. Don't do the news on Friday because I have a hangout. And I think it's good to skip it once a week at least. But I have a hangout on Thursday night with listeners, subscribers. And last night we had, 40 or 50 people there. And we went for like 3 hours. It was a lot of fun. You missed out. You should join us. StandUpWithPete.com and sign up now. And then come by the hangout on Thursday nights where we always have a good time. But it also means that sometimes I don't get the show up on Friday by midnight. And I do it in the morning, and that's what I'm doing. But I'm very happy to get this baby up and get it out to you because I think you're going to really like it. I hope you had a good week. I thank you for supporting me on the shows this week. Some great guests joining me. If you missed out, go back and check out yesterday's show with author Alyssa Quart and journalist Tesneem Zakaria. A lot of folks saying that was one of the best in a while, as a matter of fact. How about that? Bill Boyle joined me for a great conversation the other day on, I think it was Wednesday. Barry Ritholtz was here this week, and it was a short week because I had Monday off, but a great week nonetheless. So let's get to it, shall we? That's what you're here for, the guests. I know it, not me. I understand. I don't blame you. Me neither. I love talking to these people. I love learning from them. And I think Emily Atkin is one of the best climate journalists out there, which is why I am a paid subscriber of Heated.world, everybody. A weekly newsletter dedicated to original accountability reporting and analysis on the climate crisis. She's also a contributing columnist over at MSNBC. She used to be the climate staff writer at The New Republic, the deputy editor at ThinkProgress. Her work has appeared in Newsweek, Slate, Mother Jones, and so much more. And she was mentored by the late investigative journalist Wayne Barrett, which is one of the reasons why she's so good. Her microphone wasn't great. She was in a shared workspace with her colleague who's in town, Ariel, but I was psyched to get her on anyway. I mean, I think it sounds fine. It's just not optimum, and you hear some noise in the background, so I just want to explain that's why she was in one of those shared workspaces in D.C., but I was really happy to have her. I think this conversation is great. We covered a lot of ground talking about the Willow Project and how it was covered, its approval was covered, and more. She's on Twitter at MORWE, if Twitter's a thing, but go subscribe to Heated.world. Coming up, Christian Finnegan, but right now, let's do it with Emily Atkin. And there she is, Emily. Hi. How are things? How are things in the Heated newsroom? I know your coworker is there with you, and you guys are full force this week. Very exciting.
Yeah, normally we are a bi-coastal team. Ariel is on West Coast time in LA, and I'm here in DC, but she's here this week. She's actually visiting her parents, so we are working together, and the energy is great. It's so nice to be in the office with somebody and be able to do this work as a team.
Very cool. Well, you guys are doing great work as a team, even remotely, and I want to get to some of that. First of all, everybody has learned about a little bit about what's going on in Alaska just this past week. And if you've been following it, obviously it's been a fight for years. But you have a really interesting, important angle on it at Heated. The title of this piece most recently is Willow is not just an environmentalist concern. And you guys did some deep work analyzing all of like a whole bunch, 30 national news stories that were covering what this development is, the Willow Project being greenlit by the Biden administration. And I want to talk about your findings. It's a really, really important piece. Why did you choose to how often can you do this kind of investigation? Do these headlines break that you would always cover the media's coverage?
Well, I like to cover the media's coverage, but only when I think that there's something, like when I think that there is a trend in national media that might be, that could be improved upon, let's say, or like that I find is maybe not getting at the heart of what people need to know about this major news event. I think as you probably know, there aren't that many opportunities that climate change makes national news, that something climate related really breaks through the news cycle and is covered everywhere, right? And the Willow Project's decision was one of those rare stories, particularly because of how viral the topic had gone on TikTok. So I saw that Genevieve Gunther, who runs Stop Climate Silence, a media-focused organization, she had just noticed that a couple of the stories had framed the central conflict of the Willow pipeline, like the central problem, the news moment, was that it's really angering environmentalists who say that it's going to have a bad impact on the climate, which is very interesting because it is going to have a bad impact on the climate. It is angering environmentalists who say that, but it's not you don't need to attribute that to environmentalists. And the core problem and the core conflict here is not really how the decision is going to play out politically. It's really how is the decision going to affect the planet that we live on? How is it going to affect our fight to try and preserve a safe climate? For me, as a climate journalist, that is far more important. It's a far more important news angle, and it's also far more important for people to understand. The political impacts of a decision are not tangible in most people's lives, but climate change is. So I thought that was a question worth exploring. Is that trend really systemic among this breaking news? Are most news outlets taking this angle, or was Genevieve just did she pick the wrong ones?
Yeah, she highlighted the Bloomberg story that broke the news of Willow's approval. And you write, Bloomberg story attributed the project's climate consequences to, quote, environmental activists. It did not mention IPCC's warnings about the necessity of net zero by 2050, the IEA's warnings against a new fossil fuel infrastructure, or the pledges contained in the Paris Agreement. Didn't mention any of those. And then you write, this is the big pull quote for me before we get to the findings. You write, and this is why you're so great, because you're a seasoned journalist, that this is something that happens with a lot of big climate stories. To avoid the perception of bias, news outlets sometimes choose to highlight the political implications of a climate fight rather than the actual climate implications. Tell me a little bit about some of the caveats there. I mean, you're saying that this choice can be legitimate, but it's very obviously problematic.
It's much easier to just attribute something to a group than to say it yourself as a journalist. Because in order to say something yourself, in order to put in the story, just despite its harmful impacts on the climate, you have to get that research backing you up, and you have to be really confident that that is a fact. And it's just much easier to say environmentalists say it's going to be bad. And also that kind of gets you off the hook if people are angry that you just said it's going to have negative impacts on the climate. Because inevitably, especially if you're Bloomberg or one of these more national mainstream outlets, you're going to have people that think it is biased to state a fact about climate change. And a lot of editors are still under that fear that of their own readership's reaction, so they just attribute. The problem is that when you're dictated by your reader's reaction, then you can't really tell the full truth. You're more doing what I would call marketing and PR to appease your audience. And you're also kind of misinforming your readers, because it's not just that environmentalists say that this project is going to have harmful climate impacts. The International Energy Agency said that in order to reach net zero by 2050, there can't be any new fossil fuel development. That's a massive research organization, massively influential, really authoritative. The IPCC has said similar things. That's the world's top authority on climate change. You don't need to attribute it to environmentalists. And by doing so, you really misinform the reader about the facts.
Yeah, it would be the equivalent of ignoring what experts say about the dangers of tobacco smoking, or it would be more controversial, I suppose, like ignoring the experts, obstetricians, gynecologists, women's reproductive care doctors on what could happen if you didn't allow a woman health care. It would be like just focusing on the activists around those issues that care a lot about them and not on the experts. And it's always seemingly going to be controversial, but you make the good point about, well, you don't want to enrage your readers or your entire network's viewers by getting the election wrong. I mean, we see this happen. I guess one question is, how often do you think that they do or don't do that type of coverage? And you've written about this before, because they could piss off their sponsors, which are gas and oil companies. There's really not a way to connect those dots, but we can insinuate or make assumptions, which is why I like Heated the best.
Thank you. Me too. Having worked at some mainstream outlets and even having worked at a slightly conservative leading outlet, having a lot of friends that are in media, I don't think implicitly, I don't think that explicitly the sponsorships affect the coverage, but I do think there is an implicit understanding that you might this is really among higher ups, top editors, or who are engaging with publisher, engaging with business, who understand that if you take a certain approach with your coverage, you might piss off advertisers, and you just don't really want to get into that.
Right.
It's just a hassle. There is a certain, it's never explicit. Nobody ever says, don't pursue this story because this is our advertiser. If that did happen, that would be a big story. The culture in news is it's a bit more subtle. When you work at a publication as a reporter, you kind of understand what the publication's vibe is, and you're not going to pitch stories to your editor that you think might be rejected. And you're not going to try to rock the boat too much because you want to keep your job. So you're going to stay in line with the voice of
Yes, that's certainly been my experience in media. And I'm sure it's people's experience in any number of industries when they want to keep their job or at least keep people happy and not rub people the wrong way, which didn't work for me very well a lot of times.
Didn't work for me either. When I worked at Sinclair Broadcast Group, it was really tough because I was very much, I didn't care, I didn't care about pitching stories that were perhaps not in line with the ideological powers that be at the top. My editors, for the most part, were not ideologically aligned with the people at the top, but they didn't want to get shit from them. You know what I'm saying? So with my ideas, they're like, Emily, just please, pitch something a little different. And
Did you not? No. Also, you're very problematic while we're at it.
I'm super problematic. I love problems.
You're really you make it harder to work here by rubbing us the wrong way with some of your ideas for coverage.
Well, there's a reason why I don't work in
me too.
Mainstream media anymore. Why I am not my own boss and run my own thing, because nobody can tell me.
Yeah, I like to say me too, but I got more pushed out. But because of that quality, to some extent, I'm sure. Moving back to your piece, though, you guys looked at several pieces covering this from major media outlets, like 30 pieces. You put a spreadsheet together if people want to take a look at it. But that a lot of the early news coverage of President Biden's decision seemed to present the central conflict as political rather than planetary. You're right, which is one way of saying it. 75% of the news stories you looked at framed Willow as political. And this is all in if it's your most recent piece, but go look at heated.world. And you have how the national news coverage the Willow Project. So it was started with a theory, but you end up printing the piece because the theory was quite accurate. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I mean, we had an idea going into it that our theory would be accurate. We didn't know to what extent, and we thought that 75% of the stories presenting the core conflict as political was noteworthy.
Yes, it is. It is. And you have all kinds of examples that you list. Do you have them in front of you? Or you want me to read them?
You read them. I don't have them right.
The Biden administration, here's one example. The Biden administration approved the massive Willow oil project in Alaska on Monday, rejecting pleas from environmental groups. Another one. The Biden administration approved the massive Willow oil drilling project in the Alaskan Arctic over the objections of environmentalists and many Democrats who wanted the project scuttled. The majority of the stories you write that you analyze, 73% did mention Willow's potential consequences for the climate, but you say it was generally not a priority. And on average, the discussion of climate impacts didn't appear until the 7th paragraph. So there's a lot of nuance in your post about the coverage. But why is that important?
Well, here's what I want you to go and read the first paragraph of our article. After you've read the first paragraph of most articles, it kind of looks like that. President Biden's administration approved this project, angering Democrats, or like going against the whims of environmentalists who say it's bad. That's how most of it is. Now read the lead of our story.
The Biden administration, this is the lead of your story. The Biden administration on Monday announced that it is approving the largest ever proposed oil drilling project on U.S. public lands in a direct repudiation of research warning that new fossil fuel development must cease to preserve a safe climate. Perfect.
So, which do you think is more, I want to say newsworthy, but I want to say it in a way that makes people understand.
In the public's interest.
In the public's interest, right? Like, what do you think people need? The point of journalism, right, is to provide information for voters, people in a democracy, to make decisions, right? Which do you think provides voters in a democracy with more relevant information to their lives? The fact that this project's approval angered environmentalists, or the fact that this project's approval went against research showing that projects like this will prevent us from solving climate change?
That's why I love your work and why and the direction that you take on it. This is a great piece. Everybody should go read it. And of course, subscribe. Before I let you go, I want to ask about another recent piece that you did covering the environmental disaster in East Palestine. I guess that's how it's pronounced, Palestine, according to the people in Ohio. Anyway, you write that this story had everything to do with our dependence on fossil fuels, and it's because of what was in those trains. And this is a great piece. You include this commercial from Valero. Tell me why this was a fossil fuel industry spill. And I mean, we can talk about the media's coverage of it, much less politicians speaking about it.
I mean, this is an example of another story that I kind of did because I saw a narrative in the national media that I didn't think was quite accurate or quite informative enough about this. Especially among the right wing, and how they really grasped onto this disaster to make the point that this environmental disaster that happened had nothing to do with climate change. And therefore, this is why Biden and the left, they're just making up concerns about climate change in the oil industry when there are real environmental disasters happening. And I'm over here well, what do you think the disaster came from? What do you think spilled from those train cars? Bees? What? It's chemicals for the oil industry, which is causing climate change. How do you not see that this is a climate issue? Of course they don't see it.
Oh my God, we had a whole bunch of trains turned off. Don't worry, they were filled with pollinators.
Yes. Threatened pollinators, that we needed them. You can't spill them. But it is a systemic misunderstanding that, number one, that plastics, that the chemicals in there were petrochemicals, and that petrochemicals are oil, and that oil causes climate change, right? And so the chemicals that are in the train that derailed are on their way to go make massive amounts of plastic products, which is one of the main drivers of climate change. So I just wanted to really make that connection and be like, this stuff is the same stuff that the fossil fuel industry is constantly telling us is essential for our lives in these commercials. Like oil and gas. You can't live without us. We're in your footballs and your football helmets and your football jerseys and the utensils you use on your American grill. And also, our chemicals also spill from trains and pollute entire towns and give them increased risk of cancer. But like, you love football, don't you?
I mean, I don't know why the list had to really appeal to the most masculine of ideas. Your grill stuff and your sporting equipment, because you love fireworks and the handles of pistols.
Yeah, you don't know why?
No, I think I do. But I mean, I think that was the most important thing about that train derailment is that if it were oil or gasoline or natural gas, the coverage would have been different. In the reaction might have even been different from including environmental activists who might not have been concerned about this. By the way, I'm surprised they didn't blame the woke train conductors, but I didn't hear that. But the point being, this is, as you write, a fossil fuel disaster and reminding us of the main ingredient in plastic that we need so badly for all of our tools and activities and weights.
One of the reasons that I really like to focus on media coverage of climate change and media coverage of issues like these is because when national media as a whole misses something, it's indicative of the public as a whole missing something. It's indicative of an entire societal misunderstanding of climate change and the chronic underinformed public that we have. Like the media. If the media as a whole does not understand how these things are connected to climate change, then the public will not either. So that's why I think it's so important to just constantly be talking.
And that's why I think it's so important to fund your work. Heated.world. Everybody should go be a paid subscriber. It was the first independent thing that I became a paid subscriber to. And I love every time you guys put something out because I feel like a little part of it. And I hope everybody else will sign up if they haven't already, because you're doing essential work. And I'm going to I just booked it. I'm going to talk to your friend Amy Westervelt to talk about what she's doing.
Have you listened to her podcast yet? The new season? I
haven't. No, but I read about it from you and I was like, oh, I'm going to listen to this. And so I booked her with a couple days advance so I could catch up and talk to her about it. What can you tell me before I leave while I'm still recording?
Well, only one episode is out right now, but I have access to 3.
Okay.
Because, we're friends. And but I can tell you that, she's just such a masterful storyteller when it comes to presenting these climate stories in a way that's so compelling in this true crime fashion. And I just think the subject matter that she chose to tackle for this one is so important and unlike anything that anybody else is doing. So I'm excited that you're having her on.
Yeah, if you're not subscribing to drilledpodcast.com, go do that right now because I'll be talking to her later and you'll hear it next week. But I am so glad that you were able to join me on short notice. Keep up the great work. Emily, thank you very, very much on behalf of everybody listening.
Thank you for having me on. And anytime you want me on, I'm here.
You're the best. Thanks.
There she goes, Emily Atkin. Please go let her know that you heard her here on the show at Emery on Twitter, and go subscribe if you haven't to that great newsletter where I learn so much. Heated.world. You asked for more segments on climate and nature. I am delivering. Okay, now time for my second guest here on the Friday show. He joins me most Fridays. He's one of my favorite comedians, a really good friend of mine, and a guy who puts everything in a context that I absolutely love. No matter what we're talking about, we covered a lot of ground during this conversation. He's awesome, and I really like this. I think that we get into some great stuff here. I hope that you'll appreciate it. I hope that you appreciate him. Christian Finnegan, he writes the newsletter New Music for Olds, newmusicforolds.substack.com. I hope you'll go subscribe to that, and I think you're going to love my conversation with Christian Finnegan. Let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, the great Christian Finnegan is here, and I wasn't recording the video, but now I am, and I'm glad I am because you look great. You look great. You look healthy. Are you healthy?
What does that even mean?
I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know.
I mean, I'm breathing. I did go to the fitness center today, so I'm feeling.
Did you do a cardio? Did you do a strength, a stretch? A steam?
I did the same crap I always do. I half-ass some weights and then I run for a few miles. That's pretty much it.
There should be a sign, half-ass weight area. Like, not committed to these.
I am, generally speaking, the fattest person at my gym.
No, come on, really?
No, I don't know what it is, but every once in a while there'll be a couple people who are like heavier or whatever, but the amount of like ripped people for just a regular neighborhood gym is kind of shocking.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't like it.
You don't what?
I don't like it.
Yeah,
not a fan. I'm not a fan anyway.
Why don't you go to a gym where there's more people like you?
Because such a gym does not exist.
Curves.
But also, it's the one closest to my apartment, and if there's one thing I've learned over the past 20 years of mostly regular gym membership is that if it's more than a 5-minute walk, I will find a reason not to go.
Right. Yes. No, I think that's such a true point. And I think that's true of a lot of people, unless they are some kind of fitness fanatic. But anybody who is in any way, let's just put us in the category, including me, of not really looking forward to this. A longer drive makes it way harder to go do the thing. And
absolutely. And there's so many, there's just too many off ramps to doing it.
And I give you a lot of credit. If it's true that you say you're the fattest one and everybody else is ripped, because I think like that's the whole thing about a gym. That's why, I worked in one for 7 years. I have so many thoughts about all of the characters in there, but anybody that's in there, in my opinion, anybody that's in there, I always felt this way, and I'm not even being facetious, is equal. You're all there for the same reason. Good for you. It's a healthy choice, period.
I mean, there's so many archetypes. I know what you're talking about. Like, I think my least favorite archetype, and there aren't too many of these in my current gym, of people who just hang out there socially, like sitting on the machines, and like there'll be a crowd of 3 or 4, and they're always like ripped. They're like gym rats, but you can tell that they're like, you've been here for 4 hours because you're just hanging out, and they'll hang out on the machines, and they'll almost act like they're somehow like gym elders, like there's somehow they're like gold status and you're like, silver or whatever. Like, if anything, not only are we not paying the same amount per month, so I don't know why you're acting like you're better than me. I come here less often than you do. So theoretically, I am paying more per visit than you are.
There you go. It's like insurance.
Yeah, exactly. Per minute, I'm a good customer for them. Whereas you are here all the time.
The one and like, listen, I'll look around and I'll see an old man. I mean, old, can barely move, but he's on that rowing machine or he's doing whatever he's doing. And I'm like, if I'm even alive when I'm his age, much less in the gym. So I give him nothing but credit. I don't look down on that guy. I'm like, I hope I'm that guy someday. Look at that commitment. What I have no tolerance for is anybody who came there to make friends.
Yeah, what a very strange personality type that is.
Unless there's some team, I'll allow for it in like a group fitness class or like a basketball game. But if we're like, I'm a generally treadmill weights guy, we're not here to talk.
Yeah, and nobody asks me to spot them, which I appreciate.
Is that right?
Well, first of all, because again, they probably think, well, this fatty could never help me in a dangerous situation anyway.
I so want to hidden camera you and have someone be like, hey man, could you just give me a spot? And we all get to be like, watch your face, be like, well, yes, I can.
No, I would be like, yeah, no. I mean, I would say do
no?
it, but no, of course I would say yes, but I'd be like, I would do it in a way that they would never ask me again.
Just drool on them a little bit. Oh, sorry, I spit in your mouth.
Yeah.
Just fart. All right, well,
just fart a lot.
I give you a lot of credit. Also, you got to stay fit when you're in a choir, which you are in, and you did your first
You are the king of segues. That was really,
Thank you.
It made no sense, but you just delivered it with such confidence that it sounded like it did.
Thank you.
Yeah, we all know that those ripped choir members.
Got to stay in shape to perform. And you did just that at the Astoria Choir this past Saturday in Queens at this very prestigious church, I think, Trinity Church. I'm going to say it is.
Is it? It's the
All
church that allows us to
are.
rehearse there.
All churches are. Why are you in a choir, and how has that experience been? I would imagine that's a very social sitch.
It is, and I probably should be getting more out of it socially. Like a lot of them will go out drinking afterwards, and I haven't done that. First of all, because I'm not drinking anymore, but also I don't know if I want to take that step with these. Like I enjoy the people I've met there.
Yep.
But I sang a lot in high school. I went to a performing arts high school, and I was in a choir there, and I was also in a group of chamber singers, which is like a smaller group, and I was also in a barbershop quartet. And I missed singing. I haven't really done it much in my adult life, and I had actually joined a pop choir. The New York Choir Project. I joined a Brit pop choir in 2020, right before the pandemic started, and we would sing like British rock songs,
wow,
and 3 or 4 part harmony and stuff.
Oh,
but
wow.
then the pandemic happened, and that wiped that out.
Oh,
yeah. Well, I think I did it 6. I went 6 times, and then it got canceled.
Listen, do whatever you want, but I would love for the content alone for you to just go out with the choir people and then come back and talk to us about that experience. But
yeah, it's funny because having done it a lot in high school, I can see the high schooler in every single one of these people. Like, I know exactly who they were.
I feel like
you know what I mean?
See that with like most people, and I do it all the time, and it's so inappropriate. But go ahead, please.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I haven't met a lot of people because it's pretty big. There's probably 60 people in it or something like that. And I only really interact with the tenors, which is my vocal part. Yes, although I'm it's a little out of my range. I really am more of a baritone, but I am interacting with just this probably 8 to 10 people that are in my little section, and they're all very nice. But definitely in the group at large, there is a slight vibe among certain people. I don't know. I hate the word Karen because it's just like, can we stop just overusing that? Because they're not like it's calling the police on people or anything like that. No, but it a little is. But there's a sort of a bit of a human resources manager quality to a couple of the people.
Yes. I know.
You know what I mean? Like they want to start committees and things, and they want to start long email chains that aren't necessary.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not the worst thing in the world, but I also, it can be super annoying, and I don't want to play or participate, and you're being very busy. And do we really have to do all those things? Can't we just...
Do we have to turn this into an office environment? Like, can this just be sort of fun? Or like, do we have to sort of wrap ourselves up in the ceremonial parts of being in a choir? Can't we just sing and then go home? Like, do we have to have email chains? Yeah,
that seems like a lot, but I don't know what's required. Is there a dominant ethnicity? Astoria is one of the most diverse ethnically places in the world, probably that borough of that's neighborhood.
The borough of Queens, the most ethnically diverse county in the country.
Is it the most? Mm-hmm. So who's in the choir? Do we have any dominant ethnicities? Is it mostly whites, Hispanics,
Astoria
blacks?
is the whitest area of Queens, probably, unless you get out to like Bayside, like out by Long Island and stuff. But
you're counting Greeks as whites as
I mean Astoria. Obviously there's a lot of Greek heritage there, although that is kind of I wouldn't say it's dying out. Like a lot of the homes and buildings are owned by Greek families, but the actual people who live there it's no longer predominantly Greek. Kind of like the way like Chinatown or Little Italy is, whereas the kind of that was really probably 75 years ago that the predominant groups, but your landlord will most likely be Greek in Astoria. Like that's generally how it goes.
They're out there. It's a rental income, and they're out there on Mykonos on their boat while they're the apartment rent in Queens.
Exactly.
Is what I just decided. So who's in the choir?
It's a lot of white folks, but not entirely. There's Asian people and black people and a few Latino people. But I would say it's probably 70% white.
Thing I don't get about you being in a choir is you're a stand-up comedian. Why on earth would you want to share the stage with one other person? If I were in a choir, I would probably try to find a way to direct attention towards me. I'd wear a different.
I feel the exact opposite. It's very, very strange. I want to sink into the woodwork. Like, I have honestly thought about this over the past 5 years. Like, if I wasn't a comedian, like, what would I do for a living? Sure. Like, all of my answers are always equally irrational and non-practical. But I would love to be a backup singer. Like, I would love to be the guy on the side
Why?
Just with my hand in my ear.
Why not the lead?
I like singing harmony. I enjoy singing harmony, and I'm a piece of wood. I am a terrible performer when it comes to singing. Like, right. I'm just a complete non-entity, charismatically when it comes to singing.
Right.
And so I would rather just sing and be off to the side.
How much of a difference, by the way, not to go off on too far of a tangent, but I've not really thought that much about how much the performance of a musician matters or doesn't matter. And if we were taking two artists who are maybe soloists in the same genre, but they're wildly different performers, or the music is different. But like, I don't know why I'm thinking of James Taylor and like, I don't know, Billy Joel, or like.
Well, I mean, I think
James Taylor, I feel like, sits there on a stool and sings wonderfully written songs with his wonderful voice, but he doesn't really. I feel like he doesn't really perform that much. But am I missing something?
Well, I think it's like a lot like with some comedians. Some comedians are extroverted on stage, and that's their way of performing, and other comedians kind of bring you to them. They're. Yep. Like, I think of somebody like a Todd Barry or somebody like that, who's very small with what he does, but I find him to be an incredibly great performer. But it's not what people think of as capital P performance.
Right. Yeah.
It's timing and it's rhythm and it's charisma and bringing people that they want to lean in and listen to you, as opposed to sort of you putting on the show for them.
Right. Right. I do. Yeah.
I think there's. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I feel like Bethany Mandel.
Oh, that is hilarious. The woman who could not describe woke. What an amazing, crazy. Yeah.
Mandel. I don't know.
I hope this goes as viral when you couldn't quite connect the dots from comedy back to music in terms of the differentiation of performances. Yeah. I'm sure it'll go just as viral.
This is one of those moments that's not going to go viral.
Oh, that was amazing that she called it. I give her credit for calling it, right?
Well, she had no choice. I don't give her any credit. I give her zero credit. I give her 0.0 credit.
Let's come back to that, because I do want you to, if you want to finish the point about musicians and performances.
Oh, I don't. I'm having a lot of fun, and it's kind of nice to do something that is completely disconnected to comedy.
Yeah,
and it's just and it's on the calendar. It's rehearsal once a week, and it's It kind of stretches my brain. Like, I've had to relearn how to read music, which I had completely forgotten how to do.
Oh, you have to read music. Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, we did, it was a 40 plus minute requiem, with multiple parts and stuff like that. It's pretty hardcore. So it's definitely a little, the learning curve was tougher than I imagined it was going to be. So I found it like intellectually challenging, as well as,
man, I got to get some audio of it and put it under this baby.
Yeah, it's not. I think eventually it'll be up on their YouTube page, but I don't think it's up there yet.
Well, let me ask you then about the woke point. I don't know if you heard, but a 5,000 mile long blob of seaweed is moving towards the coast of Florida, and experts are saying because of all the wokeness. I just saw that tweet and thought it was pretty funny. It's true. There's a giant like blob of seaweed, but I like the idea that it's everywhere. It's why the bank failed.
I saw somebody tweet about the blob of seaweed, but I didn't know if it was a joke or not. Is it going to actually make landfall?
I just read that tweet. But I love the idea that seaweed would make landfall.
Yeah, I know.
But I mean, those kinds of green tides, red tides, whatever they're called.
But I was going to say, if the fish were going to invade and attack us, this is probably the way they would do it. I'm not saying it's happening. It's the perfect cover, though.
Yes,
I will say
that
Look at this, just harmless seaweed.
I want you to write that tweet around that headline. That is really funny. That's what it's all about. If they were going to invade, this is a Trojan horse for fish, really. The big seaweed. And it's because of all the wokeness, the wokeocracy, the wokesters, and woke is why the military has become weak, and it's why that bank has collapsed, and it's why you aren't doing well in whatever your endeavors are. It is.
I saw somebody say, I mean, of course, this has been the dialogue for however long, but somebody saying it's like all the arguments that conservatives have lost over the past 50 years, they've just put under this umbrella of wokeness, and they're trying to relitigate the same arguments they've already lost about, gay people being accepted in public, about black people not getting shot by police, like all of these sort of battles, these social crusades that they've been on the wrong side of since I was a kid. They've just sort of thrown under this term woke, and, but I would say that they're going to lose, and they will eventually. Time will defeat them because young people aren't buying any of this shit. But it's like they have no shame, and they all basically, it's just a feeling at this point. It's just, I don't like it. It's woke, and they're just all such irredeemable hacks. All of them. They're so corny. I remember years ago, in 2016, I was doing a show for A&E about race. It was me and Sherrod Small had the show called Black and White. And we had to stop at one point. We had one writer who was a bit older than the rest of us and couldn't get off making jokes about the word woke. And eventually we had to be like, can we stop? Like, woke is done. Can we stop? And this was 2016.
Yeah.
And nobody said it for a long time. Like, people were saying it around 2015, 2016. Seriously, black people on Twitter, black Twitter, and sort of black
intentions,
activists. And then it became kind of a joke that people would say for a couple of years. And then conservatives finally got around to learning about it and have just run it into the ground for the past 5 years. And it's just so tiresome. It's so tedious. They're all just such unoriginal sops.
There are some things that are annoying with new language and new trends. I don't like them. They annoy me. I just heard a friend of mine refer to someone committing suicide as unaliving themselves. And I say, no, I don't like it. But I'm not.
I have a bit of a theory about that. I don't know.
But I'm not going to say that it's a woke thing. I'm going to pick that one and say, I don't love that. And maybe I'll be proven wrong by you right now.
No, I don't think you're wrong at all. And as I've often said, like, when people talk about how Twitter isn't real life, which is true. And a lot of the stuff that people on Twitter are talking about, regular people off of Twitter aren't talking about. But everything that people off Twitter are talking about started on Twitter. That I think of Twitter as being like off Broadway.
That's a great point.
That every play that gets to Broadway had to start on off-Broadway. Not every play on off-Broadway gets there.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like every argument that people have can be traced back to some Twitter beef 3 or 4 years earlier. But in terms of the unaliving, which is ridiculous, I hadn't heard that one. But I've noticed that this conversation happens a lot around, like, the word, you hear unhoused instead of homeless.
Yeah,
now.
I don't like that either.
I don't like that either, but I understand why it happens. And I think the reason it happens, and it happens with, say, mentally challenged or mentally disabled and in all sorts of terms, is it's sort of a reminder to you that these are human beings. That, a long time ago, if you saw somebody on the street sleeping on a sleeping bag, and hadn't showered in weeks, that person would be referred to as a bum. Now, nobody in 2023 would ever refer to somebody as a bum. They would instinctively know. And so people started calling them homeless as a way to sort of like, hey, snap out of it. These are human beings. They're not bums. They're homeless people.
Yes.
But eventually, the word homeless starts to take on that same sort of familiarity. And you forget that they're real people. It's just this sort of term you hear, homeless. Whereas if I make you say unhoused, just for a brief second, you kind of reframe them as actual human beings and not just some word.
I first of all, I only say hobo, but I think that I don't think I agree with you that homeless has lost its worth. That's all.
Dude, come on, man. We're stand-up comics. How often do people use word like, I'm on the subway and this homeless guy comes out? Like it's a word that sort of denotes a personality type. almost more than literally what it is.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
That's
like,
a good point. They might be
means crazy, wacko. You know what I mean? Whereas unhoused, and then I'm not saying that I like unhoused. It's awkward. I don't think it will I don't think it's going to get to Broadway, unhoused. But I do think that on some level, it's just these words, we become inured to them and we stop hearing them after a while. And they become not necessarily punchlines, but they become sort of flippant. And the sort of constant changing, every generation, words will come along and sort of snap people out of it a little bit.
Do you have any other examples of this? Because I don't, off the top of my head, proving the point that this is not really much of an issue for me around language and it evolving. I'm like, okay, it's fine.
Well, I mean, the easiest one for me, again, as I sort of mentioned earlier, is, mentally retarded. Then it's, mentally disabled, or special needs, that this sort of constant changing verbiage. And you can say like, well, what's wrong with the word? What's wrong with retarded? That's like literally what is wrong with that etymologically? Why is that word inappropriate? It's like, well, it's not necessarily that the word itself is evil. It's just that people have become so jaded to that word that it becomes a slur and it becomes sort of a punchline and a joke. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that, I think, just happens after 20 years of using a word.
It's really, I did just read this blurb in the New York Times. I want to say today. No, I saw a tweet. Someone talking about capturing a New York Times editorial conversation from the maybe early 70s talking about the word gay. And it was just this. And a lot of people were.
I think I retweeted it. Mark Harris had tweeted it. Yeah.
I saw it in your timeline.
It was the same shit.
That's right. It was earlier. I was going to talk to you. So I always go through your timeline to see. And so it's the same thing that we're talking about, which is that could you please describe what that little blurb was about the word? They used to feel, people were upset that they can't use the word gay to describe happy anymore because it's been stolen.
Yeah, it was a round table of like New York intellectuals like Arthur Schlesinger Jr. and a few other sort of public intellectuals sort of kvetching about the acceptance of the word gay. And I remember one guy says it like literally this could be out of a Jonathan Chait, tweet last week or something. That, it's basically just this push to satisfy whiny minority groups, in a way that I find odious or something like that.
Right.
That is just these minorities who won't shut up and we have to placate them. And now we have to say their stupid word. It's the same arguments. And I always want to ask people like Bill Maher, the Jesse Singalls, these sort of people who think of themselves as liberals, but clearly are not, is like, you would agree that human progress, like human rights in this country, is better now than it was 300 years ago, right? Like you would agree that it started in one place and now it's in a different place. And generally speaking, that has been a positive arc, women voting, not having slavery, things like that. And, in my sort of mind, the way I imagine this argument going, they would admit that that's true. And what I would always want to say is like, so do you think that like things have just gotten progressively better over the past, and I'm just talking about this country, things have gotten progressively better over the 300 years. And then you happen to be alive at the end point. Like we arrived, that progress is finished. Do you know what I mean? Like we are a point on a continuum. We are a point on a line, no better, no worse, and it's always going to be awkward. It's always going to be rough. But I think you have to look at like within your generation, are you on the side that wants people to be more equal? Are you on the side that is saying that's gone too far?
I'm on the side that does not agree with this victim mentality that so many people are walking around with.
First of all, everybody has a victim mentality, right wing, left wing, old, young. The internet rewards it. I mean, especially social media. I mean, we're all in the same fucking stew. It's not just the sort of blue hair college lesbian. It's your granddad. It's some guy that you went to high school with. It's all of us. We're all whiny and we all get rewarded. We get that dopamine rush by screaming into the void and begging for attention, either by saying how bad things are for us or for getting mad at how good things are for somebody else. I mean, that's just, we're all in that soup together.
I'm so glad I said that. All right, finally, Silicon Valley Bank collapse. Your reaction in any way to the coverage, to the issue, to anything about that? I know that, like a lot of other people, you're paying attention to that, and you probably looked at your own account, and you were hoping that your your bank is your account, your money in there is all protected and insured by the FDIC.
Yeah, I mean, I don't pretend to be an expert in. I mean, I've read the same articles and tweet threads that everybody else has read, but I don't pretend to.
That has made me an expert. All that reading.
You're right. I'm sorry. I am an expert now. Basically, I
haven't been in a bank in years, but I read a couple articles.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I found kind of remarkable or remark-worthy is some of these Silicon Valley types afterwards being really shocked and offended at how vicious everyone was about them and sort of wishing them ill, being like, I hope you lose all your money, even above and beyond the whole, like, I don't want to pay for bailouts, but just like, something bad happened to you and I'm thrilled about it. And, I saw a couple people being like, the gloves are off now. Like, how dare these people, not bow down and kiss our ass. And it's just like, why would they like you? Why would they like you? You've made the world appreciably worse, and you are leaning full on into. I mean, I can just speak for myself of ruining my industry and ruining the industry of like.
Who are you talking about in general here? Silicon Valley investors,
Silicon Valley, and just the whole industry. I'm saying that the developers, all the people who are leaning into AI and leaning into, chat GP, whatever, and in all this shit, it's like, you are going to make the society worse. There's no two ways about it. It's, somebody was saying like, oh, people used to think of the tech industry as being like futuristic. It's like, well, I still think of them as futuristic. It's just that the future looks worse now. So futuristic is no longer a compliment.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the future looks, you've rendered a pretty bleak future, and I'm sorry, man, 10 years of these people, anytime there's like a magazine with a layoff and journalists get fired or a lot of my friends, you'll see these, Eddie, hey, learn to code, as if we're the future and our industry matters and yours doesn't. It's like, all right, that may end up being true, but if you step on a rake, I'm going to laugh.
One of the I love it. One of the things I've been thinking, and I don't know if this is true, someone listening will tell me for sure. If you or your kid sent your kid to STEM camp, coding camp, you learned how to code, and it's been great for you. Great. But like, I'm pretty sure the AI is going to do all that. Like all that investment in learning, humans learning to code, of all the things that's going to take care of first. We're worried about sonnets and comedy and creative arts, but I'm guessing it's going to teach itself how to do all the coding required that is currently, a more high skilled job for a person. That's what I'm thinking. Now, people will tell me if I'm wrong about ChatGPT and coding, but I keep thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I know that society has faced these things before, like with the Industrial Revolution. Like, oh my God, well, if people aren't. What if we're putting all the weavers out of business? Like, what are people going to do for a living? And I know that new industries are created with new technology. I know all of that, but it is just, you look at the future and it's just like, what are people going to do for a living? It's because we're like, not only are we sort of really taking away entire industries, we are at the same time, like radically cutting the social safety net and
yep. You got to have
telling
some
people
kind
to get a job while simultaneously removing jobs.
Universal basic something, education, income, health insurance. Like it's going to have to be the way of the future. And I just think a lot of people, smart people, haven't caught up with that. All right. I'll let you go because I said I would, but I don't want to because I love to talk to you. Thank you very much for joining me today. And I look forward to talking to you again, hopefully next week. And any plugs, any show, book, or new music for Old Discovery, which I'll plug, of course, on the way in and out.
I'm just finishing up Poker Face, which a lot of people may have already watched, a show on Peacock with Natasha Lyonne, and it's a lot of fun.
Oh, I love her.
It's very goofy. It's kind of like a modern day Columbo. It's I would recommend that.
Got it.
It's a lot of fun.
Thank you very much, my friend. Appreciate it.
Thanks, dude.
All right, that's it. That's all. That's it for the week. Thank you very much, Emily Atkin. Thank you very much, Christian Finnegan, Pete Coe, Odessa San, John Carroll, every single subscriber who makes this show work every day. Come join us and sign up at standupwithpete.com right now, and have an awesome weekend, and reach out to me in any number of ways. Join us on the Discord platform, and I'll talk to you right here on Monday.
Let the brave meet the challenge, let the weak flee. Oh, you better stand up, stand up. When you're tired of begging, saying pretty please, that's the time you gotta finally get up off of your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up, stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know us right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up, that's right. You got to rise up, you got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear and all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We got to let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up, stand up. Got to stand up. Ooh, come on, just stand up. Everybody got to stand up in the darkest hour. Stand up. People got the power. Stand up. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Stand